Welcome to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show, created and hosted by Scott Knudsen, to explore the crossroads of horses and the business world. On today's show, Scott visits with international choreographer, teacher, and author Joanna Mendl Shaw. Now here's your host, Scott Knudsen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. I'm your host, Scott Knudsen. Thank you so much for joining us today. Whether you're listening to us on KCAA, the NBC affiliate out in California, or watching our podcast on many of our platforms, we really appreciate it. Today, we have a great, exciting show. We love to bring you inspirational, educational people. We especially have one today. Joanna Mendl Shaw is on the show today. She is a world-renowned choreographer from United States, Europe, Hungary, Sweden, to an educator where she's been at New York University Tesh, Princeton, Juilliard. Thank you so much, Joanna, for being on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Scott.
Absolutely. I could not wait to get this show going. And after I met you in Dillon, Montana, we were at the Horse and Human and Nature Conference up there a few weeks ago, and it was put on by the Montana Center of Horsemanship and Montana University, and that was such a great conference. And I loved listening to you and meeting you, and I couldn't wait to share your story with the people that watch our show and listen to our show.
My pleasure.
Yes. So where do we start? So what was first for you? Was it dance or was it horses?
So I have a dance company called the Equus Projects, and we create performance works with humans and horses. It's not circus. It's not cavalier. It is very much showcasing the beautiful intimacy between a human and an equine. And I started this work over 23 years ago. And we don't own horses. We don't tour with horses. Instead, we travel throughout the United States and in Europe, and we work with local horse owners, local equestrians and their horses. We began working with dancers dancing in tandem with ridden horses. And this was way back in 1998, 99. And in the middle of a large project for the Flynn Center for the Performing Arts in Burlington, Vermont, I got a call from David Lichman, who is a 5-star Pirelli instructor. And he said, the Pirellis have heard about you and they're very interested in what you do. And we think you would be interested in what we do in natural horsemanship. And he invited me to come to a clinic in Pensacola, Florida, which was a level 4 Pirelli clinic. And at that clinic were Katja Schumann, who was the equestrian director of the Big Apple Circus, Sasha Nevedonsky, an amazing Russian gymnast who did this beautiful flying act with silks. He would do this silk flying over his horse Mammoth and then alight onto the horse. And Katja Schumann's daughter, Catherine. So in other words, we were looking at amazing liberty work. And I just said to David, I want to learn how to do that. And so we ended up collaborating with David on a project that was rehearsing in Reddick, Florida at the Pirelli Ranch. And Linda would come by and watch us rehearsing. We were rehearsing a piece with another amazing equestrian named Karen Rolfe, who does dressage naturally. And it was Karen riding and then a horse in tandem and then 2 dancers to be performed for a huge gala event for therapeutic riding program. And Linda was just fascinated watching us. We were rehearsing on the Pirelli Ranch with Karen. And at one point, one of my dancers said, we would love to pass our level 1. And the rest is history. Pat and Linda generously took us under their wing and scholarshiped us all our training for quite some years.
Wonderful.
Linda joined our board and connected us into the natural horsemanship world. And we started teaching clinics, teaching people how to ride with a dancer in tandem. But the more horsemanship we were learning, which were ground skills, we were training on lead lines and at Liberty, the more we began devising ways for us to practice horsemanship in a studio. And it wasn't about rope handling or tools. It was about what we call physical listening. We were trying to really up the ante on our noticing skills and our spatial awareness skills and our ability to make decisions in the moment. So I think that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. And I did read on your website and that all of the dancers have had the natural horsemanship training.
Yeah, no, there's no way that we would presume to say we were dancing with a horse if we didn't have a lot of horsemanship skill. So we combine our ability to improvise, which is very much about somatically joining another sentient being energetically, which is, you know, when people talk about feel in the horse world, I think that's part of what they're talking about, is being able to absorb the energetic state of your horse.
Absolutely.
We would use our ability to shape the space between our bodies and their bodies, our ability to see the architecture of space. We use all of that in tandem with horsemanship. So we're alternating between gentle ask and then allowing the horse's behavior to actually choreograph us. And that calls for a real sophisticated level of integrating two different disciplines. It's very challenging.
Absolutely. It's really beautiful. It is artistry for sure. And that's why I was so excited to do the show. I watched some of your films, and you can just tell the liberty and the softness of the horse. And I don't care what discipline, I don't care if it's Western or dressage, whenever you have that horse and that person working with that horse in unison, it's a special moment. And that's something you capture on film, and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Scott will be right back with more from Joanna Mendl Shaw.
Hi, I'm Scott Knutson, host of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. Today, we're going to talk about something I'm really passionate about. Those that know me know I love my coffee. Those that don't, now you know I do. And we've been working on this for several months, and we wanted to get it just right. And we don't put our name on anything unless we feel 100% certain it's the best product we can get. And we've done it. I really believe we've done it. We've created a coffee line, 13 great flavors. I'm going to show you 3 of them. We have K-Cups in all 13 flavors. Here's a Jamaican Me Crazy. It's just a really great coffee. Everyone has great logos. It has a brand, the same brand that's on our horses, our trailers. You know that brand means something, and we wouldn't put it on here if it wasn't good coffee. We have whole bean. This is a great Honduran blend, and it's a whole bean coffee. We have whole bean in all 13 flavors. And then we have a ground coffee. This is a really great one. My wife and I really like this a lot, loved it. So we named it after our daughter, Hades Blend. Everyone has the packaging and the logo of the show, our brand, and I hope you like it. I really believe you will. And we're gonna have more flavors coming out soon. We're gonna have the pumpkin spices, and then we're gonna go to peppermint after that. And please send us your suggestions as well. You can find it at cowboyentrepreneur.shop. Think coffee shop, cowboyentrepreneur.shop. Thank you so much.
So when you're making a film, I know you travel and you work with different horses. So what's the process? So when you go on to a ranch or a farm that has horses and y'all are going to work with them, you're going to dance with them, because I know you do urban and rural, which is really cool. So what's the process? Can you take us through that?
Well, first of all, just talking about the urban and the rural, there is a part of the Equus Projects that does urban performance work.
Okay.
In New York City, we've only brought horses into New York a few times. it's pretty stressful for a horse to be in the city. I'm going to give you an example of a piece we did.
Okay.
In 2005, we were commissioned to make a piece close to the 9/11 site for a little oval garden in downtown Manhattan. And we brought a dressage horse. Our dear friend Patricia Norcia was riding, and the property owner said, the horse has to be under 1,000 pounds, and you may only walk and trot, you may not canter, and you can never cross the middle of the lawn. So basically they were saying you could only ride the periphery in a walk or a trot. And then we asked them if we could canter across the oval garden at the very end to exit. And so we created a piece that was sort of like these beautiful spatial designs that the dancers and the ridden horse made around the periphery with theme and variation. And then I think it really traveled clockwise the entire time. But so in some ways, the limitations that we were given created the structure of the choreography. And mind you, it was maybe 7 minutes at the most. For that one, because it was a ridden horse, we weren't working at liberty. We were basically choreographing the spatial patterns. In 2011, we made a big piece of choreography for a small horse farm with 3 horses. And we brought in a Pirelli trainer to help us orchestrate how we were going to choreograph the piece. And she started by saying, how do you want to end? And I said, I really want the horses and the dancers to be in this wild trotting canter in a circle, and then pause, and then open the gates, and all 10 dancers and 3 horses run up this hillside and disappear behind a stand of trees. And she said, that sounds amazing, and never rehearse that. Don't ever open the gate, because if the horses know they can leave, they're going to be standing by the gate.
Absolutely.
And waiting. So what we do is with Farrah Green, we broke down the skill sets that we needed for each section. And then we rehearsed the horsemanship skill sets, like sending horses in a circle. And by the way, then there's going to be a solo in this area, this dust puddle, and get the horses used to stopping when Eddie throws himself into this dust puddle. And so basically getting the horses used to different events. We wanted a section where the dancers would be doing these phrases that were actually based on the patterns that the horses' feet were making. So they're improvising based on tracking patterns in the dirt. But we wanted the horses not to be, some of the movement was vigorous. At no point were they scattering energy and sending the horses. Their attention was intentionally on the ground. So choreographically, the decision to have them looking down was purposeful, because if they started looking around them, they would be sending energy to the horses and then sending them away. And we wanted the dancers in the midst of the horses. We also had treats, and dancers had treats in their pockets. But a lot of it is trying to base the choreographic strategy on the behavior of the animals, and then trying to create movement that will elicit a certain kind of behavior, and then creating the choreography that elicits that behavior. So at no point are they doing ballet moves, twirling or lifting a leg. It's very much creating movement that speaks to the horse or speaks to the space between our bodies and the animals.
It's really beautiful. And what I think is so incredible about what you do, you don't have one show that you just go on tour. Every place you go is you're working with different horses in different facilities. And I think that is so incredible. And then you're also part of the cast, the horses, you can't verbally communicate. You can only do it through motion. So you have two challenges, but when you see it, it comes together so great. So how do you prepare when you're going to a place? Do you draw it out? Do you meet with your dancers? Do you have it on a computer? How do you set the stage before you go?
I'm going to give you an example, but I do want to mention that I love the fact that you're curious. Every project that we do is different.
Yes.
So every site that we're working on has its own distinct necessities. Every site that we're working on has a different kind of equestrian. So in Texas, also in 2008 or 9, I think it was, we were in Aubrey, Texas, which is near Denton, and we were working with ridden horses. And it was one of our riders was a cutting and reining rider, a grandma. She worked on a cattle ranch, and she had all those fabulous moves, the spinning and the skid stops. And so I knew that I wanted to do something choreographic that would take advantage of that. And then I wanted the herd of humans and the herd of horses to sort of work across this hillside. And so we worked the piece in sections. This one piece was done on a hillside. At the bottom of it was a body of water. And then there was a little island. I wanted a solo human dancer on the island. What do I have to do? I have to figure out how to get the audience to look where the action is taking place. So the first thing I did was I asked this one beautiful rider on a thoroughbred. I put her in a wide brim hat with a long red ribbon, and I asked her to trot and then canter across the view of the audience. So the audience's eyes would travel. And then she stopped on an overlook looking down at this island. And because she was looking down, then the audience is looking down at the island. And then you see this solo dancer. And we choreographed a piece for Tal Adler that would introduce the audience the idea that there would be some things that looked like dancing, but there would also be things that looked like pedestrian action. Because when you're working with horses, you need to be able to at times do very pedestrian things. There was going to be a section where we took a halter off a horse. Have to be able, you're not going to dance that. Right. You're just going to do it. So it was a combination of this beautiful movement that picked up grass and sprinkled the grass, and you have the sense that he's really sensing the environment. And then at one point I had him take a stick and toss it into the water. Well, the owners of the ranch had forgotten to put their white Jack Russell puppy inside. Oh, no. And here we are in the middle of this solo, and this little puppy, Tipper, comes running along, flings himself into the water, and goes to get the stick. Now, this dancer had a choice. He had this much music. We had a big sound system, and he knew he had this much time to get the solo performed and to move off the island. But you can't miss this opportunity. Tipper brings him the stick back, and he throws the stick again, because how can you not do that? It wasn't in the choreography. So this is a perfect example of making a decision in real time, adjusting to an animal that happens to be present unexpectedly. But it is very much what we do with the horses, is if they offer something, we'll go, yes, and I'll do that. And now I'd really like you to move laterally. So that's a nice example of So
It's great. And I remember us talking in Montana. And it's so cool that we met in Montana. You're in New York, I'm in Texas. And I remember that you were talking about precision choreography, but it's real-time decision making. And that's a perfect example. And
yes.
that's with you as a dancer, or with them as a dancer, but as somebody that rides, for a living, and other people, that's always going on. And
Right.
somehow you make that artistic look. And this, I appreciate you telling that story, because that happens every day with horses, and
Absolutely.
it's how you adjust.
So I just wanted to go on and say, then he moves
Yeah.
off the island, and there's a negotiation with a male dancer that in a way mirrors the kind of alpha negotiation that you might see in a herd. And eventually they move, it's a little bit contentious, and they move up onto the hillside where they're running around each other. Well, why did I do that? Because I wanted the cutting and reining horse in the middle of that circle to be able to spin. So I knew that I wanted a choreographic reason for Jackie Reddish, the rider, to be able to do that fabulous spinning. And there's, two men sort of in a negotiation, chasing each other in a circle with the spinning horse in the middle. And at a certain point, she breaks out of that and tears across the hillside, and out come a whole group of horses following her, and it goes into another section. So we choreograph things in terms of the visual effect we want, the skill sets that we need, both in horsemanship and choreographically, and then we put the two together. We choreograph it in modules. Yes, I do write it out on maps, spatial maps that are written down. And I often share that with the riders and the dancers, so they have a visual picture of what we're trying to achieve.
Sure.
I'm never just saying to the dancer, okay, now I want you to run across the hillside 4 times. They want to know why they're doing that. And in some ways, we're also giving the horses a sense of, why am I doing this? The dancer becomes the reason that they're doing something. They become the motivation for riding in this circle or riding in this pattern.
Wow. So if somebody's going to work with you in there, do you look first for a dancer, or do you look first for somebody that has the natural horsemanship that you can train to dance? Because your moves are very, very, okay.
So I work with a company of dancers that train a lot in horsemanship. So this isn't like I just hire a dancer for one project.
Right.
The dancers that I'm working with now have been with the company for quite some time. I think we're going to see a bit of a film that we're making, and it's Kat Reese and Clement Mensa. Kat's been with the company for over 4 years. She also happens to be a really skillful horsewoman. She grew up with horses. This is the first time I have a dancer in the company who brings tons of horsemanship with her, but the Liberty work is new for her. So she's definitely in, training mode. So I first need a core of dancers, but whenever we do a project, we identify the kind of horsemanship that we might need. If it's at the Mozart Festival and we're doing formation riding, I'm looking for dressage riders. Let me please quit my email so that you're not hearing my signal. There we go.
Awesome.
So for each project, we reach out to the kind of riders that we would like to be working with. In Helena, Montana, we just wanted people who were trained in Pirelli, because we only had 10 days to make a full evening long piece, and we needed a common language. And we knew that we would have people who could do wonderful rope handling. We knew that we'd have at least one Liberty horse. And we actually brought David Lichman with us, and he was a tremendous draw because everyone had studied with David. And so we were able to get 16 riders and 19 horses and be able to put a show together in 10 days.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's such a feat to be able to do that. It shows your testament as a leader to do that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to get.
Lots of preparation, let me tell you.
It would have to be, but it's perfect preparation that lends to that kind of outcome.
Right.
And you can tell you've done it, so you know what you're doing for sure. So when you're on tour, I saw on your website, I love your social media, that they cook their own meals when they're on tour, and it's like a family. So what's that experience like when you're bringing people together? You're going on tour to work with horses, and people are coming to see you, and it's not a rehearsed show.
Well, it is rehearsed. It is rehearsed. I mean,
Once you get there,
in
right?
Helena, Montana, that's right. We're not
Right.
transporting a rehearsal.
Right,
It's not like
absolutely. That's right.
Cavalia, where we come in and the acts are all set. It's not a circus act. So what it is, Scott, is really deep, immersive community engagement. We're engaging with cowboys, we're engaging with dressage riders, we're engaging with people who love natural horsemanship, who love horses.
Mhm.
Some of the work we do is with challenged teens, and our trainer has a group of young teens that she works with, and we choreograph with them. Now that we go down and train with the horses and incrementally choreograph with them. But
That's awesome.
when we go into a community, it's the idea of eating together is practical. It takes us 10-hour days to make these shows. So we're rehearsing to clean up and go to a restaurant and then come back is just too time consuming. So very often for lunch, we'll bring our own lunches, and then we'll stay in an Airbnb and we cook our own meals. In Helena, Montana, because we had people on site with us, we actually created a soup kitchen, and we fed our entire cast for the whole time.
So cool.
We had help, but it was fantastic.
That is so cool. I love the youth. I didn't see that, but I love that with the teenagers and the youth, and getting them. That's a generational gift, and I'm passionate about that. I think it's really cool that y'all do that. Yeah. And something you said earlier about the education part, I believe so much in that. And that's what we kind of created the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show is. I think we can always learn from each other, and it's always evolving. And when I watched what you did, there's liberty training, there's horsemanship skills, but with the horses, they were so soft, and you can apply that to any way you make your living. When you make your living on a horse or with horses, the easier you can do it and the more functional for the horse is just better. And watching what you do, you get that outcome.
Well, I think that, we live in this American culture. It really is invested in lots of strong weight and lots of directness in space, and that kind of super athletic, what would be, in my opinion, in horsemanship, sort of a phase 4. We're sort of enamored of that. And
Sure.
I would have to say in horsemanship, it's your ability to finesse that light touch that will create the most nuanced and sustained connection with the animal. It's not our forcefulness. It's not how loud we can be. And so we have to train for both ranges. And
I agree.
yeah.
I agree 100%. Every once in a while, you just have to just go do something. But I don't like to create a dust up. I like it to be nice and easy and smooth, and just kind of blend in with your surroundings. And I was just raised that way, and it's better for the horse. And whatever ultimately is better for the horse and the animals you're working, it's better for me. So really cool. So if you're listening to us on KCAA, on the NBC affiliate out in California, or if you're watching our Cowboy Entrepreneur podcast, we really appreciate it. We're here with Joanna Mendl Shaw, and we are having a great time talking dancing and horses and being on tour and the Equus projects. And by projects, there's a lot of projects. So let's talk films. And I know you're about to leave and go create a new one in just a couple of weeks.
Well, actually, we're midway through shooting a film titled Imprinted, and the film was conceived because our trainer, Carrie Christensen, has a mare, a 19-year-old mare, whom she had impregnated 2 years ago. And her best friend, Terry Smith, has a mare, Roxy, whom we've been training with, who was impregnated. These two women decided that they wanted to create their next horse. And Carrie said to us, wouldn't it be cool if we could sort of imprint the dancers on these newborn foals? Realistically, you're imprinting on that newborn within the first 20 minutes.
Mhm.
So that's not really what's happening in this film. In this film, we're watching the dancers training with the pregnant mares. We're watching the birth of each of these two foals, one in June and one in April. And then we're watching the developing language between the dancers and these, it's a colt and a filly, Lorenzo and Lyra. And what we're trying to do is merge our improvisation skills so that as we're working with these babies, we're developing a nonverbal language with them, which isn't just about don't invade my space or move here or pay attention to the lead line and the halter. It's a bit more inventive than that, and seeing how they respond. And this month, next month, October, will be a prime time for us to really get good footage of that. Because when they're newborns, they're still very, their attention span is very short.
Sure.
And we had some interludes with them, but not so many. And then Lorenzo actually colicked twice, which was very scary. And that will be part of the film because he's still on stall rest. And we need to acknowledge that for us, the horses come first, their well-being,
Absolutely,
us taking care of them. And so rather than having Lorenzo wildly racing around the paddock, it might be that we're going to spend stall time with him. And that's changed the content of the film. But what the film really has become about is the rigor of what we're trying to do with horses, which is that integrating of our improvisation skills and horsemanship, which is really humbling. And what we realized is that what imprinting is really about is the imprint of our human history and what we bring into that learning curve.
Mhm.
What me in particular, what I bring into learning something that I'm not doing that well, that horsemanship is hard. And listening with that amount of attending is hard. Being that gentle and soft, knowing when to stop asking, which is really big deal for me. As dancers, we just want to get better and we just want to practice and practice and practice.
Right.
But when you're dancing with a horse, you have another sentient being, and they probably already got it, right? They got it before you did. And
Absolutely.
So you need to know when to stop. And one of the biggest things that our trainer will say is, hey, listen, the horse got it already. I know you're still practicing. You got to stop. So shedding the imprint of my dancer's urgency has become part of the film. It's very interesting. One of our dancers is from Ghana. He was born in Ghana. He grew up in the Netherlands. And I think for Clement, he's taught all over the world. He speaks 5 languages fluently. He, in a way, this is a big man. He brings a kind of gentleness. He's also a father, and his second son was just born last Friday.
Awesome.
So that will be part of the film as well, is for both Clement and I, we're parents, and the imprint, what we bring as parents, our listening skills are imprinted on us. And then for Kat, the imprint of her lifelong experience with horses. So the film is titled Imprinted, and we will continue to be shooting in October.
That's
yeah.
so cool. And what you're saying is so spot on. We want to keep doing more and doing it faster, but it's really the horse's timeline, and
Right.
that's all that matters in the end is how that horse is learning, how they're moving
Right.
forward. And what you're saying, working with your kids is something. Our daughter, she's been dancing for a long time, and she's grown up with horses. And she had one of her dance friends that was out here, and she didn't have the horse experience as a kid. And they would come out, and she wanted that. And now she's riding for a Division I university, which is the highest level. She made the team after less than a year with horses. But I remember going down to the barn, and we had two babies that were just born the same day.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was amazing. And I went and I looked in the pasture they were born in, and both my daughter and her friend were laying in the green grass with the babies.
Oh,
With the babies, I was like, oh my goodness, what in the world just happened? But it was that calmness, and they were on the horse's
yeah.
schedule, and everything you're saying, I experienced that, but putting it together when you explain it means so much. And it really is neat to see when you slow down, and I think it was a dancer moves because they're slow and easy. They don't get in a rush, and they gave the horse their space. And the
Mhm.
moms were standing there, and the babies, and were laying on the ground. It was so peaceful.
Great.
So I'm looking forward to that film for sure.
Oh, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. Scott will be right back with Joanna Mendl Shaw. For more information on Scott Knudsen, the Cowboy Entrepreneur, visit us online at cowboyentrepreneur.com.
Hi, I'm Scott Knudsen, host of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show, heard on KCAA, Wednesdays, 6 p.m. Pacific. I'd like to talk to you about something I'm very passionate about. Those that know me know I love my coffee. In the morning, afternoon, and even late in the evening, I enjoy a good cup of coffee almost any time of the day. Now, my team at the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show has been working for several months on creating and introducing our own brand of coffee. We wanted to make sure that we got it just right. We don't want to put our name on anything unless we're 100% certain that it's the best product available, and we've finally done it. We have created a wonderful line of coffees, 13 fantastic flavors offered in whole bean, ground, and K-cups, any way you like to brew your coffee. Now, each of our coffees carries our brand, the very same brand that we put on our horses, our trailers, and our chaps. So you know that this is a quality product. And we only use 100% Arabica beans, the very best beans available. Just listen to some of these wonderful blends and flavors. Jamaican Me Crazy, Honduran San Marcos, Chocolate Cherry Amaretto, Breakfast Blend, and my very favorite, Haley's Blend. A coffee so good, we named it after my daughter. You can order these coffees today by going online to cowboyentrepreneur.shop. That's cowboyentrepreneur.shop. And if you order today, you can get an extra 10% off your final purchase just by entering the promo code COWBOY on checkout. Remember, that's promo code COWBOY for an extra 10% off. Just go to cowboyentrepreneur.shop to order your coffee today.
So you have your films. So I know there's a book that you can start pre-ordering. It's out on the website. Would you mind showing your book and talking about
Sure.
physical listening?
So, COVID, good opportunity to write a really long book.
I love that. Don't waste an opportunity.
Yes. So
that's
the book is basically follows the trajectory of our work. So each chapter has one or two iconic projects, and we describe, just as you invited me to explain, how did we make that piece on that hillside in Texas? How did we navigate the exit with the horses and the dancers going up the hillside? So it starts in 1998, talks about how I started the work, and then each chapter is a different phase of our learning, all the way up through COVID, when we kept training because we were outside, but we also were teaching classes on Zoom, which was pretty fabulous.
Right.
And learning how to teach embodied experiences in the virtual space was an interesting challenge.
Right. So how do you, with all the films you do and you have your virtual classes, how do you find that space to write that book? I know it was during COVID and you had time at the house, but the creative side, is that where you pull that knowledge or is it the experiences from being on the road?
Well, I think actually sitting down 8 hours a day, I pulled that from dancer's discipline, knowing that you
Awesome,
have to
awesome.
keep yourself in shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's sort of where it came from. Yes, I'm going to write this book. Yes, we're in lockdown. This is a time to sit at my computer 8 hours a day, train once a week, but really focus on getting the writing done.
I love that so much that, you know, if something slows down over here, you just go to the other side and start working that.
There you go.
And that's the way we were brought up, you know, that's just the spirit of you. And I love that. And that's the inspirational part. You know, when something happens to, you know, whether they're listening or watching the show, we want them to know if something happens during that day that's not great, just go another direction and find the greatness. And I can't wait to get the book and read it. But physical listening. So where'd you come up with the title?
Well, we were practicing our horsemanship in a dance studio, which again was not taking 22-foot lines, although we did a little bit with rope handling, because actually I think elegant rope handling is really important. Mm-hmm. It has to be efficient. You can't be fumbling your rope handling. But it was more practicing what does it mean to work with an introvert? If I'm improvising with a dancer that is sort of embodied an introverted personality, what kind of listening, physical listening, do I need to do to create a movement conversation? And how is that different from working with a dominant extrovert? So we would practice our horse behavior strategies, which was really interesting. We would practice what we call logging, which is I did this movement and now I'm going to do something else. And by the way, I remember exactly what that was, which is actually movement accuracy and horsemanship is really important. You need to be consistent. Absolutely. You need to remember exactly how it's done. And so we would practice not only horsemanship tasks, but also the invention of a movement. Can I remember exactly what it was? Many dancers learn how to dance looking in a mirror. When you're working with a horse, there is no mirror. It's not about you. It's not about what you look like. So the kind of selfless investment in what we call a task, thinking of dancing as a choreographic task. Mm-hmm. What we did is we built really a huge repertory of training and choreographic strategies. And we began to call that somatic practice physical listening, which we've also brought physical listening into working with engineers. We were invited to go to the Naval War College and teach a whole day on embodied decision-making. So when you're using not just your left brain verbal skills, but your right brain intuitive sensory skills to create collaboration, to make inventive decisions, to create strategy. We've taken physical listening into NYU Med School to talk to first-year medical students about how important physical listening is for creating a compassionate rapport with your patient.
That's perfect. So do you see yourself doing more of the corporate speaking? Because I can see in a corporate setting, that's a very fine attribute to have.
Well, I have worked with Training Magazine. This is working with corporations, Google and Verizon and Levi Strauss on their training platforms. And I've been working with the experiential portion of Training Magazines in their annual conferences. I did so live. I taught physical listening in New Orleans a few years ago, but then during COVID, trying to bring that piece of it into the virtual space when you only have 5 minutes to present, that's challenging.
That's tough.
You know, I think physical listening, like horsemanship, it takes the time it takes, which means
Absolutely.
allowing for blink time, allowing for processing. And when you're in a conference and you're on a schedule where you've been allotted 5 minutes, to me, that didn't quite work as well. But I love doing embodied decision-making in corporate environments. It's very interesting.
I think it's fascinating. I really do. I love that term. I've never heard the term before. But it is definitely, if you can use both sides of your brain, whether you're in the horse world or in a business environment, it just gives you the advantage, not in a win versus loss, but to understand who you're working with. And it just makes the outcome so much better.
I think we're very intent upon talking.
Mm-hmm.
We're not as intent and as skilled at just listening.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And taking time, like you say, to blink and listen. And that's so great. So one thing you talked about was horizontal versus vertical movement. And I thought that was so fascinating. Would you explain that?
So, there's actually 3 planes. There's the horizontal plane,
Okay.
which is this horizontal like a tabletop.
Okay.
And the dimensions there are side, front, side, back. So side, side, front, back. Hula hoop, horizontal.
Okay.
Our vertical plane or coronal plane is up and down and side, side. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
And so vertical plane. And then we also work in the sagittal plane, which is like a bicycle wheel.
Okay.
Forward and back, up and down. All our movement is a combination of these 3. We're constantly moving between the planes. Sometimes when movement is taught, it's taught in sort of, okay, this happens like this.
Right.
Well, actually it doesn't. The preparation to do that is probably that. I'm moving slightly horizontal. I'm actually intending in the vertical to go sagittal. And so getting people to understand the importance of all 3 planes in your movement is very important. I find that as human beings, we're very invested in the vertical and the sagittal.
Absolutely.
For us as dancers working with horses function in the horizontal. They're long horizontal creatures. They take a lot of horizontal space to turn. And so for us as dancers, it was really important for us to think in the horizontal plane so that we're not just these little creatures that are jumping up and down and running forward.
Right.
For us to acknowledge the horizontal in a way made our bodies more congruent with the animals' bodies. And I think for riders to understand that their horses, yes, moving sagittally, yes, moving up and down, but there's also a lot of lateral movement. And that lateral shifting is huge, even though it's very subtle and you're working through your sits bones, it's really, really important to acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm. And to understand it, like the way you're explaining it. Yes.
I also think that sometimes getting sort of a narrow sagittal focus doesn't allow a rider enough horizontal width to really ride with the horse. Mm-hmm. I remember Linda Pirelli talking to me about her horse Remmer and saying, I just find sitting Remmer's trot is really difficult. And what I noticed is that she would tend to narrow her focus, and her body language had sort of a narrow feeling to it. And I didn't know for sure, but I could just sense that if she could just feel more of the horizontal, it would just help. I can't quite say why. And so I asked her to ride Remmer in a trot and count the trees from right to left, and then count trees from left to right. And she came back and she said, I don't know what that was, but something changed. And then I explained to her, because if I had just said, Linda, you need to own horizontal more, she would have gone, what?
Yes.
But by giving her a task in the horizontal so she could feel it and then go, oh, I know what that felt like. I can remember that feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so fantastic. It shows, for one, we can all keep learning. For sure, it doesn't matter how long you've done this thing. And two, it shows how great of an educator you are. Because,
well, thank you.
Well, absolutely. I'm not just saying it because you're on the show. I mean, you simplify it, and for someone like me that doesn't understand all the dancing terms, or maybe, I understand the horse word, I can count trees, and you make it simple.
Yes.
And that. Whenever somebody can do that for a person that's experienced, or for the horse is going to learn, and the rider.
Yeah, I think, Scott, that's a really astute observation and important. I think sometimes you're tempted to show your student how smart you are, and load them with far too much information. And for me, I've come to realize, having been an educator my whole career, that the ability to make it simple, not dummy it down, by the way, but break it down into its components so that you can actually scaffold the learning incrementally in simple steps, is sort of an art form.
Absolutely.
By the way, being able to do that as a choreographer is also important. What do I want my audience to see first? Well, I want them to watch that rider ride from left to right, and then I want them to look at that island, so that you're breaking down the components of where you're guiding the viewer's eye. And by the way, I also feel like when people ask their horse to go somewhere, very often their focus gets glued on the horse, which I've certainly found shuts the horse down, because then it's all, I'm asking you, and it's pressure. But if you can trace the spatial pathway and then ask and then trace, the horse will read that spatial pathway in your intention. So spatial intention, I think, is very important in horsemanship.
Absolutely. I 100%, because if you stare at any student, it's hard for them to come up with the answer, but if you give them space to come up with the answer, they will.
Right, but I'm not only talking about mental space, which by the way is blink time. I'm actually asking, I'm suggesting that the teacher use spatial images to help someone understand where they're starting and where they need to end up with, and the pathway that they need to get there. And by the way, with horses, it's usually it's always a horizontal pathway, unless you want them jumping over something. It's a horizontal pathway.
And you just lead them with your eyes.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So in November, y'all have another virtual class, correct? I think I saw that.
I am going to start teaching physical listening virtually on Zoom. And we did a similar set of classes last summer and last fall, and learned a lot about where we succeeded and where it could have been even better. And so I'm going to start teaching on Mondays from 12 to 3 in the virtual Zoom space. Awesome. And I hope some folks will come and join me.
Absolutely. So how do they find you? Like, to say they're watching this, they're like fascinated like I am. And they're like, I want to take this class. How would they do that?
So they have to go on to www.equus, onsite, ONSITE.org. And that's our website. And the classes will be on our homepage, and then there'll be a way to sign up for the classes, either through Eventbrite or just paying through PayPal or Venmo. And that's also how you can order the book. You can get the book through Amazon. It's quite expensive through Amazon, but if you order it through our website, I will sign a copy for you and
Wonderful.
send it to you. So,
Well, that's wonderful. And I spent a lot of time on your website and your social media, and your website is phenomenal. It really is. And I encourage everyone who's watching or listening to our show to go to the website, and it will just inspire you to want to learn more about how to handle horses and how the worlds go together. So what advice do you have? So you're an entrepreneur for sure. If anyone is, you are. So what advice would you have for someone that's either in the horse world that wants to move toward this direction, or maybe in the dance world that wants to move to this direction?
Well, I think thinking expansively so that you're not just siloing, I'm just going to learn how to do this, and I'm just going to learn to do it this way. In a way, getting your brain to think horizontally.
Absolutely.
I think determination. I think meeting lots of people. How fun was it for me to be the lone dancer at a huge equine conference, which is a little intimidating, but courage is another component to that. Having the courage to take risks and then talk to people, share your vision, listen to suggestions that people make. All of those things factored into me being able to follow this crazy vision of being able to dance with a horse, which is a really lovely thing to do for the animal. I think it gives them a voice.
Absolutely, it does. It's gorgeous. And I think it gives them a voice, but it also educates the horse. And I think it also educates the people handling the horse, whether you're riding them or working them or just being an owner of one, to help them slow down and understand. I think it creates that unity.
You know, one of the things that we found that was so fun working with riders is that this is not a performance form that's based on competition. You're not competing. You're not showing your horse. You're doing something that's fun for you and for the animal. Right. Yeah, so performing with these dancers, just first of all, it once again enabled riders to actually think more horizontally. Because when you have a dancer next to you, you're not focused on constantly micromanaging your animal.
Right.
And the dancer, because they understand horsemanship, if they know the choreography, you'll have the horse's inside ear on the dancer.
Right.
And the horse will actually work with the dancer. So it becomes this seamless trio.
Unison. Yeah. It's so beautiful. And so when you started, so if there's somebody that is in a field right now, what words of encouragement okay, I think the virtual class is the first way to do it, just to understand it more, but to get in the field. And I'm always encouraging people, if that's your dream, to be an entrepreneur or be around horses, it's a great industry, the more people you meet and talk to. And that's why I think your virtual classes, because you're known around the world, but to have that kind of access for somebody, that's why the virtual class is so important for me, for somebody that wants to learn, to have that opportunity. Mm-hmm. So what do you see? I
won't ask people to dance, but they will. They will move. Hey. We're moving all the time. You know. One of the things that I ended up advising on corporate folks during the Training Magazine National Conference was we tend to want to just be a talking head. Right. in these Zoom spaces, and I encourage people to pull the camera out a little bit and use your hands so that the honesty of your commitment to what you're talking about becomes expressed through the whole body rather than just be a talking head talking to a camera. And I think that was the big takeaway, by the way, for people now in this pandemic world that we're in, trying to communicate in virtual spaces.
Yeah.
But it's really important with horses that your whole body, that you truly embody your intention, not just have your tools.
Right. Absolutely.
Communicate the intention.
Yes, because they will feel the whole body, whether you're riding them or next to them. Absolutely. They're very, being a prey animal, that they have to, so they definitely do. So what's on your wall behind you? Oh my goodness.
So these are, a lot of people think it's wallpaper. It's not. Yeah. These are called wick trimmers.
Very cool.
And they were used for beeswax candles. They date back, I think, to the 1600s. And we have a big variety. Some are brass, some are iron, some are silver. And I've just been collecting them. They're pretty rare. So it's fun to go into an antique store and say, do you have any wick trimmers? Or I usually don't ask. I try and find them. So
that is so cool. So what got you started with that?
I was teaching in Scotland, and I was in Edinburgh, which is an amazing historic city. And I went into an antique store, and way up above, the one right in the middle, second row, second from the top, is a misshapen little one. And I bought it. I didn't know what it was. And I went, that is so cool. I love that. And then Scotland, there were a lot of wick trimmers. And I began to realize that I could find them if I really looked hard. And then when I got married to my husband, he really loved them. And he's a graphic artist. So he designed this
you can tell
display. We have about 175 of them now. So I think we have more than the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Maybe they'll be valuable one day.
At least in here, absolutely. Those are really cool.
Well, I think the repetition, a collection of anything, obviously you're in a tack room, and behind you, you have all of these bridles and
headstalls, and a lot of them are retired.
It's sort of beautiful. It creates a design, the repetition.
Thank you. Elizabeth McCall came up with that idea, and I love it. I don't use those guys that much anymore, but they're from horses that we did some pretty cool things with, and I remember the horse because of that and the memories. So it's really cool.
Scott, thank you so much. I'm very honored.
Thank you so much, and we definitely have some Cowboy Entrepreneur coffee coming up there for you. Some whole bean, and I hope you like it. And thank you for being an inspiration to everyone that watches and listens to the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show.
Thanks so much, Scott. It was a pleasure to be able to talk about this work.
So much fun. I'm so glad I got to meet you. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you to all the great sponsors of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show. For more information about today's guest, Joanna Mendl Shaw, please visit her website, equusonsite.org. If you or your business is interested in being a sponsor of the Cowboy Entrepreneur Show, please call our office at 830-992-1786 or visit our website, cowboyentrepreneur.com.